Welcome back to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Cynthia Jennings is looking to make our state tick. She's been busy making some good trouble in Hartford, Connecticut. Now she wants to make some good trouble as our next Secretary of the State. Yep, you've met a bunch of the people running for Secretary of State on this program. And today we're going to meet Cynthia Jennings. Cynthia Jennings, thank you for making the schlep down here. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you too, Paul.
So, Cynthia, we're going to tell people all about you, your history at the Hartford City Council, your environment law. But first, just to get it straight, you're running for Secretary of the State, which you're not exploring, right? You're running.
No,
right?
I'm actually a candidate.
You're a candidate. Mm-hmm. And Secretary of State is the most important elections official in Connecticut. You oversee elections. You oversee voter registration rolls, how absentee balloting. And you're also running the state's commercial database. So you also play an important role in the business community. And as we know, in the last 4 years in America, these jobs have gotten very high profile because people are concerned about the future of our democracy. You're running as an independent. You're not running as a Democrat.
No,
you're not running as a Republican. Did you think of running as a Green or Conservative Party, anything like that? Or why independent?
Well, independent because I believe that the two-party system that we have in Connecticut is not working for the voters. Mm-hmm. It's not working for the state, and it amasses a great amount of power in one party to actually disenfranchise members of the other party and members that are not generally voters from the voting process. So I think it's important that no one major party control the elections in Connecticut.
But there's two parties that now do, right?
Pardon me?
It's two parties now. You're talking about the two-party system.
Right. I'm talking about the two-party system, Democrats and the Republicans.
So you could have run as a Republican, right, to challenge it, or you just don't share those views, I take it?
No, it's not whether I share those views. I've been a Republican before. I've been a Democrat before, and
okay.
I've also been a working party family member.
So but you didn't want to run this time as working party family or working families party or Green or anything like that?
No. I think that it's very important that we recognize that the two-party system that we now have in effect, and it's almost impossible for anyone who's not a member of the two-party system to win an election. So the two-party system that we have in effect now is actually suppressing multiple numbers of voters. It creates a situation where we're more faced with corruption because the voting process entails a lot of money and a lot of money and a lot of power. So I think that in terms of who should control the Secretary of the State, I don't think any particular party anything particular major party should control that system.
All right, so it's important for voting, you think, for people to trust in the process and for it to be administered fairly so everyone gets a shot that
Yes.
Parties don't control.
We have to have full and fair elections in Connecticut. We are way behind the national agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we don't have early voting in Connecticut. The national agenda, that John Lewis had, the John Lewis Act, that agenda supports people being 15 days of early voting. We don't have that in Connecticut. That agenda supports mandatory voter registration. We don't have that in Connecticut.
Meaning that everyone has to be signed up, or it's just automatically signed up? How does that work?
Yes, it means that everyone would have to be signed up, and it can be an automatic process. We have the Department of Motor Vehicle process, but a lot of people don't have cars, so they're not involved in that process. So it becomes an economic issue as well as whether or not,
How would you get people signed up? Would you get them through Social Security? Through what would be the way to get it universal, automated?
Well, I haven't gotten that deep into the weeds yet, but I think that it's
important.
But
the concept, the principle.
Right. The principle
is early voting. The principle is universal registration.
Yes, absolutely. And in Connecticut, we have a system where many of the cities have two voters lists, the inactive list and the active list. And that means that those people that are on the inactive list can be disenfranchised just by how they're interviewed or what they're told when they go to vote.
And just so people know what that means, if I'm not mistaken, every bunch of years, a local registrar of voters office will see who hasn't voted in a while.
Right. They'll conduct.
They'll send a postcard or not.
They will send out a postcard canvas, which automatically excludes a number of people because poor people, women with children, homeless people are not involved in that postcard. They will not send that postcard back. And so they'll be automatically removed from the active voters list to the inactive voters list. So their status is changed by virtue of the fact that they did not receive the postcard canvas. And if that's the only method that they're using, then that method is in fact disenfranchising or removing people from the polls or removing their right to vote.
So, Cynthia Jennings, is that what you mean by suppressing, or is there something more specific about the way major parties are suppressing the vote?
Oh, there are many ways major parties suppress the vote. The major parties can, they can suppress the vote in any number of people, any number of voters who are not necessarily supporting their candidacy or their issue. So they can suppress the vote by not allowing people or by removing people, purging people from the voters list illegally, or making sure that when people are in the polls to vote, they're told, well, you vote in another state or you vote in another city. There's so many ways that you can suppress the vote that it's unreal. They can use the inactive list or votes versus the active list and tell people, well, you're on the inactive list, so you're not eligible to vote in this election. You can vote in the next election. Now they're moving towards same day registration, but you have to go downtown in a lot of cities, and people who don't have a car are not going to get on the bus, go downtown, register to vote, and come back to the polls. So they know that if you leave the polls, then you're less likely to vote in that election.
Senator Jennings, I was interested to hear you tell me that you were a Republican, you were a Democrat, you remember the Working Families Party. Was there a change in your views when you went from party to party, or how did that happen? Like, when were you a Republican?
No, I was a Republican way back when John Rowland was running, and he had asked me to run
for governor.
Right. He had asked me to run for his comptroller, and I was considering it. And so, in order to do that, of course, I had to change parties.
How did that come about that you were?
Believe me, I was very active politically, but I don't know how I was selected to become comptroller. And it meant that I would be running against Nancy Wyman, who then later on became the lieutenant governor. So eventually I decided I would not run for comptroller in Governor Rowland's campaign. And so therefore I did not change my party back to Democrat. When I went to vote in the Republican primary, I was told that I was not registered as a Republican. So somebody automatically changed my party back to Democrat. I don't know how that took place, but it did. And it was surprising to me at the time, and it's still surprising to me that people would make those changes without consulting with you.
But then you became a Hartford City Councilman, correct? Or was that before that?
Oh, no. Years later, I became a Hartford City Council member.
As a Democrat?
Yes, as a Democrat. No, I'm sorry. I was a Democrat. I was registered as a Democrat, but I was a Working Families Party member. If you're a member of the Working Families Party.
Have 3 members on the 9-member council because there's a minority party representation.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
And so how long were you a councilwoman?
I was on council for 6 years in Hartford.
How was that?
How was it? It was an eye-opening experience.
Tell me about that.
Well, I learned a lot about how government really works, and I learned a lot about checks and balances. I always believed that the mayor was checked by the council, and the council was checked the treasurer, but it doesn't necessarily work like that. And now, if the mayor can get enough people on his side, he can run the city and manage the budget in any way he chooses to do so. So there was a lot of push and pull because I was part of the person who believed, well, there's got to be checks and balances on these people in power. And so it was an opportunity to see how the budget is actually managed, how people are hired in the city, and what actually goes on behind the scenes.
And you weren't new to government, correct? Wasn't it back in the 90s when Carrie Saxon Perry was the mayor?
Right.
You worked for her.
Yes, I worked for Mayor Perry
the
as her executive
first
assistant.
black female mayor in New England, correct?
Yes, absolutely. The woman who wore the hats.
Yeah, she had the great hats.
The woman who was the social worker. And what I learned then.
First advocate of legalization, any prominent role of drug legalization in the state.
She was so far ahead of her time.
She was. I remember interviewing her about that.
It wasn't until recently that I realized how far ahead of her she was ahead of her time. She taught me a lot. She used to be disrespected because she was not an attorney. And I learned that when I came to Connecticut, I came from Newark, New Jersey, and with 70 cents in my pocket, and I walked about 80 blocks to my aunt's house in New York to see if she could get me to Connecticut. How old? I was 17.
You were 17. Your
right.
parents had divorced.
Right.
You had previously lived in Hartford and Bridgeport, correct?
Yes, I was.
You
born...
went to live with Newark with relatives.
Right,
You had a 2.5-month-old son.
right.
And you went, what brought you to New York to leave your parents, and why did you have only 70 cents in your pocket?
Well, my parents did not live in New York. My aunt lived in New York. I had 70 cents in my pocket because I was a single mother, and I just had no money. And so I felt like if I could get to my aunt in New York, she would get me. She would pay my way to Connecticut so that I could live in Connecticut.
And why did you want to come back to Connecticut?
I was very scared for my son. My son was 2.5 months old, and we were going through the Vietnam War at the time. And I was concerned that my son the war had gone on so long, I was concerned my son would either be killed in the war or that he would be killed on the streets of Newark, New Jersey. Newark was a
Had
very
riots back then.
yeah, it was a very dangerous city to live in, and I was not going to raise my son there.
So who was in Connecticut whom you wanted to go back to?
Oh, my father. My father was in Connecticut.
Hartford?
Yes, he was in Hartford.
So what happened with the 70 cents in New York? You came off a bus?
Yeah, I took the bus to my aunt's house, and then I walked. I walked the 70 blocks to my aunt's house, and my aunt, she wanted me to stay in New York with her, and I was like, no, New York is even more dangerous. I cannot raise my son in New York. So she kept me there. I stayed there about 2 weeks, and then she called my father, and they made arrangements for me to get to Connecticut.
So what year was that?
Oh, that was 1966 or 60. Yes, 1966 or 67, right?
Mhm.
67.
And so you came to Hartford, and then you had a pretty successful career. You got a law degree.
Yes, I did. Thanks to Mayor Perry.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so
She got flack for not being a lawyer.
Oh yeah, she used to get a lot of flack for not being a lawyer. So when she finally, when she lost her election, she said no one was going to hire myself, Sean Wooden, who was also working in her office, and
Who's
Christine
now the
Shaw.
treasurer. And, I do need to interrupt you for a second because I need to let people know they're listening to WNHH LP at 103.5 FM live stream from New Haven, Connecticut. We have to do that for the FCC.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that that's the law. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. So all you future go-getters were working for Mayor Perry.
Right. What she did was she said no one's going to hire you for 3 years anyway because you supported me and I lost. So she made sure that every one of us got into law school.
How did she do that?
She would send us to the law school. She would give us good recommendations with the application process. She would make calls for us, and she made sure that we all got in law school.
And where did you go?
I went to UConn.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Okay. How was that?
It was a wonderful
good law school,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
And what did you feel about law school? What was your what did you like about law school? What did you find most interesting?
Whew, law school is hard.
First year's toughest, correct?
Yes,
That's when they
exactly
kick your butt
right.
about
Oh.
torts and knowing the basics of the law. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Oh, you've been to law school, or you know
I
someone
know
who has
people
been
that
to
do- yeah,
law
yeah,
school.
yeah.
Probably
Year
children.
one is the tough one, yeah.
Yeah, that was the worst one. But after you get through the first year, I mean, you're totally isolated from your friends, your family members, because you're studying, and you're in fear every minute. I did not want to disappoint my family. I didn't want to disappoint Mayor Perry. I wanted to make sure that I was successful, and I worked very hard. But I was very much involved in environmental law at the time. And it wasn't environmental law at the time. I was opposing a landfill that I lived near in North Hartford that was a polluting landfill, and it smelled awful. And I was fighting that landfill while I was when I went into law school. And what really made me go to law school was not just Mayor Perry, but the fact that every time I went to a lawyer anywhere in Hartford to get assistance in having them clean up that filthy landfill, they would say, "Well, we can't help you because we're under contract with the operator of the landfill." And so then I went to the Hartford City Council and I asked them if they could help us oppose this landfill and have them clean it up. And the City Council said that they had signed the contract that said that they could not stand with the residents in the event of an environmental suit. So when I went to law school, I was pretty clear about what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an environmental attorney, which I am. And I was, I can remember going from attorney to attorney. One day I just got so tired. it was hot, and I left all my things, and I said, I'll be back to pick them up. And his name was Alan Koskoff. And I
Oh, Koskoff, and yeah.
No, not Koskoff, Kosloff, I'm sorry. Kosloff from Kos, and he was a well-known environmental attorney
Okay.
in Hartford, in West Hartford. And so I left my plans and things with him, And then I went to law school, and I said, well, I'm going to take up environmental law. So I'm sitting in the first environmental law class, and I was the only black in the class. There must have been 80 people in that class. And the professor called my name out, and he said, Cynthia Jennings. He said, what are you doing here?
What?
And that's what I said.
What does that mean?
And I said,
What, did he know who you were from politics or something?
No. I said, I
Just
beg
saying
your
because you're black?
I couldn't understand. I said, I beg your pardon. And he said, you came to my office 2 years ago and left all your plans and never came back.
And that's who it was.
Right. He was a professor. That man took me under his wing. He hired me after I got out of law school. He was a great person, but that first interaction with him, I thought I was so embarrassed and I was so incensed. But it just goes to show how wrong you can be about a person. He was really shocked that I was there because he had no clue that I would have any way of getting into law school, let alone end up in environmental law.
When did you graduate?
1998.
And environmental law had become a thing.
Yes, it had. It had become a thing, and I was very much involved with environmental justice because Hartford had so many more polluting facilities than any other city in the state. In fact, 70 towns plus New York City used to dump their garbage in Hartford, and it was just a very toxic place. And we had.
So tell me about a case you took on.
Oh, well, the first case that I took on, and it was not my case. I worked with National Association for Development, and they had a they had a lawsuit going, a Title VI lawsuit going, and they were trying.
And what is a Title VI lawsuit?
Well, a Title VI lawsuit just had to do with a section of the law that had to do with civil rights, but it also had to do with employment. Not employment, environment. And so we were bringing our case under that title, and when I finally got involved in the case, they actually backed out and settled the case, and the Justice Department worked with me for a year and a half, had me meeting for every week with the landfill operator to develop a plan for them cleaning up that landfill, and they literally spent $13.4 million of their own money.
And is it clean now?
Landfill. Oh, it's clean now because we came up with a process whereby if anyone smelled that landfill, which was the most offensive place to be, if anyone smelled it, they were fined $25,000 a day until the smell was gone. So I only smelled it one day. That was it. And I drove past it every day looking for that. But
And now you're smelling something wrong in the way our elections work. And that's why we're talking to Cynthia Jennings, an independent third-party candidate, not exploratory, running for Secretary of State in Connecticut here on Dateline New Haven and WNHH-FM. So we talked a little bit, Cynthia Jennings, about some of your issues. It sounded like you want to have early voting for sure. You want to have automatic registration of people for sure. You want to stop the purging of voting lists. What are some of the other top issues you have?
Okay. All right. So let me just say first that I'm seeking the nomination of the Independent Party.
Oh, the Independent Party.
Right. The Independent Party. Right.
I got that wrong. Okay.
Yes.
The Independent Party. Now, wasn't that the one that originally, or was that the Independence Party? Was originally a right-wing anti-abortion party and then got taken over by Bloomberg centrists?
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
But the Independent Party last year, they've affiliated with some national movement for sort of like neither left nor right, kind of new politics center stuff. Is that the one?
That might be the party. Yes, that might be the party. I can't say for sure.
So who else is running for the Independent Party?
So far, I'm running in the one of the 5 constitutional offices, and I know that we had someone else who was interested in running for comptroller. I'm not sure what's going on with that, and so we're the only 2 people that are running.
Will there be a convention where you get?
That's I believe there will be a convention. If not, there's going to be there's going to be a convention. I believe. Okay, I'm not familiar with their strategies.
But you don't know yet if there's going to be a primary.
No, there's not going to be a primary. I believe they're going to hopefully they will select me to be their candidate.
Have you spoken to them or?
Oh yes, I've spoken to them, absolutely, through my campaign manager.
Okay. So that's so some of your biggest. What about ranked choice voting?
Okay, ranked choice voting. It's very interesting. It would probably mean that I could be elected, more easily. Ranked choice voting is where you don't just select one person that you want to support. You select 3 people. You have your number one choice. It might be Cynthia Jennings is my number one choice, but if she doesn't make it my number two choice,
so that people don't feel like they're throwing away their vote. Because
Right.
after the first round, the person has the least votes, unless someone has over 50%, they eliminate the person who got the least and then gave their second choice voters to the next person, and that keeps going. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. So that what happens is you actually get to vote instead of just saying I'm not going to vote for so and so because it's going to throw away my vote. You'll know that your vote will not be.
And there is a
away.
move to study it in Connecticut. There's a bill. People are promoting it. It hasn't gotten very far. What's your position on it? Because the Secretary of State candidates I've interviewed are all over the map on this one.
Okay. Well, I think that ranked choice voting is very good for us.
So you
and
support it?
Yes, I do, and it allows people not to just right now we have our elections are to the highest bidder. We have millionaires running for office, and it means that those people who want to run, who might have something to offer to the state, could be eliminated because they don't have the money to run.
So you're saying this enables more people to have a chance?
Absolutely. Opens up ballot access, and ballot access, which just means access to the
Well, it's a
ballot.
little different from ballot access. It's about having a chance to win if you're not from the major parties or the one who's the anointed one. In the
Well,
primary.
yes, this particular ranked voting does gives you a better opportunity to win based on your platform and what you've done in your own community, as opposed to how much money you have.
And then I understand I'm hearing ballot access being a big issue. I know someone involved in your campaign has also run up against that. How many signatures will you need? I guess if you get the party nomination, will you still need to petition on the ballot, or they have a ballot line?
Well, unfortunately, if you get the ballot so far, the way it's set up is that you still have to get your signatures. I don't know how many.
They have to get a certain amount of votes in every quadrennial gubernatorial election, I think, to get the ballot line. So how many signatures would you have to get?
Well, we don't know how many yet because it has to do with the percentage of the vote and what the Secretary of State is going to do. And it also has to do with the fact that Governor Lamont currently has he may have executive powers in order to say that because of COVID, we're going to reduce the number of people that you have to come in contact with. And that's fine. My position is this. I'm an attorney. We use electronic signatures all the time. You know, it's important that.
Should that be just for COVID or in general?
No, that Governor Lamont can only do his executive powers are restricted to COVID.
Would it need to be a constitutional amendment to make it permanent?
It may require a constitutional amendment, but it also may require that that the legislature submit a bill and that it gets passed. So there's a number of ways that.
So you support electronic signatures in general?
Absolutely.
And that means you don't have to knock on everyone's door. You can email them or text them, and they can send you back their signature.
Yes,
How's that verified so that you make sure you got real people in those end?
Well, the same way the banks verify to make sure that they got the right money. There will definitely be procedures in place that would safeguard the signatures.
Mm-hmm. What about no excuses absentee ballots? Just anyone can vote absentee. Would you be in favor of that?
Oh, absolutely. I support no excuse absentee ballot because so many people are now having to lie and say they're going to be out of town at all hours of voting, or they may be at work and they just can't get off. They may have childcare issues. There are a number of reasons why people should be allowed to vote absentee.
So you'd be supportive of that too, because I know that one's going through. And how's Denise Merrill doing? She's retiring after 3 terms as Secretary of State. Has she done a good job in your opinion?
She's done a good job. No one knocks Denise Merrill. She's done a good job. I like the fact that you can register by computer and register to vote, and 2 days later your voting your voting card shows up in the mail. So you don't have to go anywhere to register to vote. We just need to take it further and have more people have access, have homeless people have access to voting. Maybe have post office boxes around the city for them so that they can have a stable address so that they don't have to worry about whether or not they're voting. Their information can come to them. They can go check it, and they can send it back if they have to send it back.
And why do you want the job?
I want the job because I want to see Connecticut pulled into line with the national agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, we are not doing well in Connecticut. We have parties, we have a system where you might have a party that it's just totally controls what happens in the polls. I've worked on voter suppression a lot, and I was trained by the Secretary of State as an observer. I've observed in the Bridgeport elections.
Oh boy, that's quite a city to observe in. Yeah.
Be careful. I was born in Bridgeport. I love Bridgeport. Bridgeport is it is the most friendly city that you will have in Connecticut. It's really like going south. When I opened up my law practice in Bridgeport, and I was part of the Barrister Law Group, and when I opened up the law practice, I went to mail something at the post office, and a woman came out of her office, and she introduced herself, and she said, "I'm the postmaster," and she said, "Would you like to go to church with me on Sunday?" Who does that?
Did you go?
No, I didn't go. I didn't go to church that Sunday. I was still trying to set up my office. But the bottom line is just the fact that she offered. She came out. She had a conversation. She introduced herself. When you can go and I've been in post offices thousands of times in Hartford, and I've never had the postmaster come out and introduce themselves.
That's never happened to me either.
Right. So,
church or anywhere else. Not even down the street for a drink.
Right.
Cynthia Jennings, so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you,
Good
too.
luck in getting the Independent Party nomination.
Thank you.
For Secretary of the State. I always try to remember the Secretary of the State. You're not going negotiating with NATO or Vladimir Putin. You're doing our state's elections.
Right. Thank you so much for having me.
It was great to get to know you. And how can folks find out about your campaign?
They can go to Jennings 4CT.
The number
that's
4.
number 4, Jennings number 4CT. And they can at gmail.com.
All right.
And I have Jason Bartlett's number, but I do not have it close enough with me. But they can contact me, and I will make sure that I get back in touch with them.
Okay, thank you for getting in touch with us.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long and all weekend long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.